stars, I'm a fool for your love.
Hello students, hope you're fine. Assalamu alaikum. Today I'm going to talk about formal and informal letter writing. Formal letters are written to authorities, top management, customers. They're the people who are distant from you, so you got to watch your language while communicating to them. Formal letters can be opened with your dear sir, madam, and closed with can be closed with yours faithfully. Y in yours is to be capitalized, whereas F in faithfully should be written in lowercase. Another way to open a formal letter is to have a name with dear, like dear Mr. Beckham, dear Ali, dear Kamran, and end it or close it with yours sincerely. Once again, Y in yours is to be capitalized and S in sincerely should be in lowercase. Students, please keep this thing in mind. If you start your letter with dear sir or dear sir, madam, in other words, if your salutation is dear sir or dear sir, madam, do not close it with yours sincerely. It's a common error here in Pakistan. Avoid it. Use formal vocabulary. Formal vocabulary includes longer words, the words you're not, which are not used in spoken English. Now, let me give you example of such vocabulary. I got at the station late. I arrived at the station late. You can see over here the word got is the past form of get, and it is generally used in spoken English, right? So this is to be avoided if you're writing formal letters. So the revised version could be that you can use the word arrive in place of get. So you have used past form of arrive, that is arrived. And this is how you have got, a formal tone in the revised sentence. So what you got to do, you have to think of a particular word. If possible, you can consult a dictionary to unfold whether that particular word is formal or informal. And if it's informal and you're writing a formal letter, you've got to change that word, replace it with a formal alternative. Is that clear? So you got to watch your tone when you're writing formal letters. Now let's talk about informal letter writing. Okay. All right, so informal letters are written to relatives, friends, people you are in close relationship with. They're opened with dear and a name like dear Linda, dear Kamran, and they are closed with best wishes of love. Please note that when you're writing informal, salutations for informal letters, you don't have to include titles like Mr. and Mrs. All right. Now let's have a look at this activity. State where the following extract is from a formal and an informal letter. Now here, you really need to pay attention to sentences or words in green to figure out what actually makes, this text, this extract taken from informal letter, informal. Here are some news from school. It seems that as if, the writer is talking to someone who's sitting next to him, and so it's a conversational tone. And what contributes to this conversational tone are the words like here and some. Then remember how the stones and bumps, please pay attention to this expression, stones and bumps. It's an informal expression. Well, now please take note of these words. Well, actually, really, by the way, basically, all these are spoken fillers. They are used in spoken English to emphasize or to take thinking time. right? So when we are talking, sometimes we get stuck and we got to think about what we are trying to say or what we want to say, right? And so we use the words like well, right, really, basically, actually, all these sort of fillers. So they are to be avoided if you are engaged in formal letter writing. All right, so there are two more words which need our attention. They are someone gives some money. Okay, someone, and some. See over here in this sentence, we will have to suffer no more for someone gives some money. Now these two words, someone and some, are making the message vague, right? We don't know who is given the money or who gave the money and how much money was given. All right, so please, you have to avoid vague expressions which actually make your message ambiguous, unclear, not concrete. Okay, you got to avoid such expressions, and someone and some are some of the expressions, right, which makes your message vague. As far as your informal letter writing is concerned, you can have such expressions because these expressions give conversational tone to your message. All right, another important aspect which we got to discuss is the use of causative verbs or causative structure over here. Like, so the field has had a lot of work done on it. Now here the writer has used causative structure, or he's used causative verb has. Now, what are causative verbs? Let me tell you. For example, when you say, I get my hair cut, this means you arrange someone to cut your hair. And here the verb get is causative because causative verbs cause someone to do something, right? And they're generally used in spoken English. They're not used in formal letters, okay? An alternative to causative verbs in formal letter is passive voice. Another example of a causative verb is I have my car painted. That means I arrange someone to paint my car. They are to be avoided if you're engaged in formal letters or formal letter writing. Now let's have a look at a formal version of the previous message, informal message. We are pleased to inform that the money you donated, you just note down this particular word donated over here. This particular word, right? Please note that this word is comprised of 3 syllables, right? And it's a long word and it's a formal word, right? Now, some students, they usually ask me, sir, how are you going to know whether a particular word is formal or informal? Honestly speaking, there are only 2 possible ways. A, you got to consult a dictionary, because a good dictionary always tells you whether a particular word is formal or informal. And B, you got to read a lot of formal stuff. That means you read formal letters, right? Read model business letters a lot. Then you are able to guess whether a particular word is formal or informal. Even then, if you're confused, you got to consult a dictionary. Now so one more thing which you really need to note over here, that in the previous letter, the phrase was someone gave some money, and that phrase has been replaced with a formal word, donated. This means formal words normally, carry a definition in themselves, okay, and they save over space, okay, and they're more expressive, right? Same goes for other words like put to good, fully functioning, read of, suitable. They all are more expressive. Now let's have a look at an activity which will actually enhance your further understanding about formal and informal vocabulary. All right, here we are. Let me erase this one. Okay, that's gone. All right, read the following sentences taken from different letters. Say whether they are from formal or an informal letters. Say whether it should be or informal letters. Right, okay. Here's, I think this little array here. So let's correct it. It should be or informal letters. Now, just have a look at number 1. Once again, we wish you to express our gratitude. If we pay attention closely, we can spot out 2 words here. they are express and gratitude. They both are formal expressions, formal vocabulary, formal words. Okay, and we don't see any contraction here. We don't see any sort of informal vocabulary words. We don't see any filler like really basically actually. So it seems like a formal sentence. It's been taken from a formal letter, of course. Now let's have a look at number 2. Here we see contractions. Contraction. Okay, what are contractions? Now let me explain it to you. Native speakers, when they talk, they contract auxiliary verbs, like over here, it's we're, but the full form is we are. So instead of uttering we are, they say we're. They contract auxiliary verb are. Same goes for I'm. They write this way, I am. Right? Similarly, instead of do not, they say don't. Instead of did not, they say didn't. And this is the right spoken expression. Yes, most of the Asians people in Asian people, they don't like contract when they're talking. This is the difference between native speakers and us, right? So but honestly, ideally we should contract when we are using these auxiliaries in while we are talking to someone. All right, okay. So you got to avoid contractions when you are engaged in formal letter writing. Do not contract auxiliaries. Whereas over here, it seems like this sentence has been taken from an informal letter, because we can see contraction here. And another clue is this word really. As I told you earlier also, the words like really, basically, actually, they are to be avoided, because they are spoken fillers. They are used to gain thinking time or to put emphasis in spoken English. All right, hopefully students, you'll be able to do 3 and 4 on your own. And let's go ahead now. Okay, let's talk about beginning and ending of a formal letter. Let me erase this thing over here. All right, beginning and ending of a letter. Beginning of a letter normally explain the purpose of writing. So you tell that why you're writing, right? Why are you writing a letter, right? What's the purpose, right? And then ending of a letter refers back to the same purpose. So it reverts the purpose in a way. This means that if you have written your opening paragraph and you have written, someone, or you have written your concluding paragraph also, and you have written, different openings for different letters and different conclusions for different letters. Okay. All right. So then you should be able to match, a particular opening with a particular conclusion, right? Or in other words, the opening of a particular letter with the conclusion of the same letter. So let's have a look at an activity like this. Now here, I'm not going to do the whole thing with you guys. I'll be doing just one. All right. So here, what is the case that this column, in this column we have openings, and in this column we have endings of different letters, right? Now what you got to do, that we got to match the opening with the conclusion, right? That means that there are openings, there are endings, okay? And we got to match, the opening of a particular letter with the conclusion or ending of the same letter, right? So let's have a look at one. I'm writing to invite you to our university's annual prize giving ceremony. Now, if I read once again, we thank you for your generosity. It seems like someone has given money. It doesn't match with this one. We would be grateful if you were to honor us with your presence, and we look forward to receiving your confirmation. Yes, the writer is being grateful and is honoring someone and is talking about his presence. And whereas in this sentence, in number one, right, the writer is inviting someone, right, fine, right, to attend a ceremony, prize giving ceremony. So this means that this opening matches with this ending, right? That means one matches with B. Then this also tells us that when we write an opening of a letter, right, this is a great possibility that you can, base your conclusion on the same, on the same thing, right? Is that clear? All right, class. I hope you've understood this thing. Now let's talk about another important thing here. This is just an activity. I think I have already given you as an assignment. It's right opening the ending for the following letter questions. Now these are three questions, and you have to write, opening and ending for each question, right? Okay, let's talk about the body. In body, we've got the first thing, how to achieve clarity. And there are two ways to achieve clarity. Number one is the basic need for adaptation. Number two, adaptation begins with visualizing the reader. Now, what is adaptation? Adaptation means that you adjust your writing, keeping your audience in mind, keeping your reader in mind, right? Okay, for example, if you're writing a message for grade 5 student, the same message is being written for university students, right? Would you be using, the same level of vocabulary? No. For grade 5 students, you probably would write, use simple words, okay, the words they can understand. You most likely you're going to use short sentences, not very complex sentences. Whereas for university students, you got to use, formal vocabulary most, or maybe if they're your friends, then even if it's informal, but this is something which should be, uh, which should have an academic touch, right? So, and we should reflect that you are a qualified person, you're you're a qualified audience or something like that, right? Is that clear now? Okay, now another important thing here which you got to take care of, that is, that adaptation, as I discussed earlier, also visualizing the readers. You got to visualize your readers. So if I'm writing, something for the university students, so I got to visualize them. I got to think about their knowledge. I got to think about their interest. I got to think about their level of vocabulary. I got to think about, their age, their what could may attract them, what may, like, kind of what sort of thing make them bored or something like that, right? So I really need to look at different things if I'm writing for them. I got to visualize my reader. I got to understand. I got to imagine them. I got to think in their place, in their shoe, right? Okay. Now let's have a look at two more ways to actually write with clarity. And number one is select the right word and use familiar words. There is an activity about that. Now this one, this column, right, the sentences, the text in this column, the message is difficult to understand, and in this column, the message is easy. So this has been, this is the revised, message for this one, and this is the revised message for this one. So let's have a look at why is this one difficult and why this one is easy, right? And what sort of writing, we should prefer and why, and which one is, you know, which seems clear, or which one has more clarity, right? Okay, the machine has tendency to develop excessive unpleasant audio symptoms when operating at elevated temperatures. Okay. Well, it seems like that this is something, which is being written to people who are technically sound. For example, the words like excessive, unpleasant audio symptoms, elevated temperatures, all these words suggest that this is being addressed to technical people. Now, if you send this message to a layman, right? A common person, he may not be able to understand it. So what you should do, if you are like, writing to a layman, you got to revise it. You got to replace difficult words, with simple words. Now, sometimes, this is a common thing here in Pakistan, that we think that if you're using high-fi vocabulary, complex words, right? Okay, we are very good communicator, but actually that's not the case. You're a very bad communicator if you haven't visualized your audience and their level of vocabulary, and without visualizing them, if you end up writing a very difficult message for them, right, it's rather a miscommunication, right? So it's not at all an effective communication. So we actually, in business world, we do not write to impress, we rather write to communicate. The main goal is to get your message across. This is very important, right? So you have to visualize your audience and you try to get your message across. Of course, if your audience has got already very sound knowledge, okay, and reading skills or writing skills, or they're proficient in language, then you got to definitely visualize, keep this thing in mind, right? Having visualized them, you got to come up with a better vocabulary level, with better language proficiency, something which is impressive, right? So the main thing that you got to keep the audience in mind. Now the same thing has been revised here in the revision, revised sentence. It says that the machine tends to get noisy when it runs hot. C, A, it's short. B, it's clear, it's straight. So instead of tendency, they have used the verb tends. Now remember, wherever possible, if you are going to use, let's suppose that you've got two options. One is to use a noun, another is to use a verb. It's better that you use verb. For example, over here, has tendency. Tendency is a noun, and we do have a verb as an alternative which can be used. So it's better to use tends instead of tendency, because this will shorten the message. This will kind of energize your language. Okay, it will make your message powerful. So this means wherever possible, okay, if you wherever possible, use action verbs instead of nouns. Where you really have to choose between a verb or a noun, it's better that you choose verb, right, rather than a noun. All right, so let's have a look at another example here. Company operations for the preceding accounting period terminated with a substantial deficit. Okay, if this is being written to someone with management sciences background, that's fine. But for a common person, this is really something which is difficult to understand, right? It doesn't, put the messages straight. All right. Now look at the revised one. The company lost much money last year. Pretty straight, simple, right? Anyone can understand. Anyone who knows English can understand it, right? Okay, let's go ahead now. There is an activity about it given your, in the uploaded slides also. You try to attempt them. There are sample answers available. Now let's talk about some more ways to achieve clarity. You limit sentence content, avoid roundabout constructions, avoid unnecessary repetition of words or ideas, determine the emphasis in sentence design. Now here, limit sentence content. That means do not have lots of ideas in one sentence. Rather, you break, ideas into different sentences. Let's have a look at example here. Now this one, this column, long and hard to understand, is written in red, and this is short and clear. And what makes this one short and clear? What makes this one long and hard to understand? Let's discuss, let's have a look at. This letter is being distributed with enrollment confirmation sheets, which are to serve as final check on the correctness of registration of students and are to be used later when obtaining semester grades from the direct line systems, which are to be available 2 weeks after the term officially ends. Oh my God. You know what? It was very difficult to read in a single breath. My goodness. Right? So What makes this so lengthy? I mean, this is a sentence of a paragraph length. It's, you know, one has to read it again and again to figure out what is being communicated. So this is the thing you got to avoid. Now, what, you know, makes it lengthy? Let me tell you. Oh God. All right. Just pay attention to these culprits. Now, instead of putting a full stop, the writer is using subordinators like which, when, which, and conjunctions like and, right? So these through conjunctions and subordinators, writer is combining, you know, ideas, right, into one sentence. So it's such a long, such a complex sentence, right? So what you got to do, that you got to remove, get rid of unnecessary subordinators, okay, to actually, you know, keep one idea in one sentence, right? Okay, let's have a look at here. The letter is being distributed with enrollment confirmation sheet, fully stop. Now the next thing is not being, you know, connected with using subordinators. Instead, writer has put a fully stop. One idea has been completed, so there got to be a pause, and then he is begin with another idea. This sheet will serve now as a final check on student registration. Then fully stop. Then he has used transition to connect the ideas, the codes on it, and you can see over here this word it actually refers back, right? It's referring back. What does refer back? Sorry. Yeah, this word it, this pronoun it refers back to what? Letter the codes on it. Where? Sheet. It refers to sheet. It refers back to sheet. So you can use pronouns also, right, to combine the ideas, right, or to combine sentences, not sentences, but the ideas, sorry. Okay, it will be used to access course grades through the regulating system. So one again, there is a pause and he has used semicolon here, and the grade will be 2 weeks after the term officially ends. So one sentence over here in this word in this text, right, there are lots of ideas in one sentence, and those ideas have been broken into different sentences by putting pauses, using transitions, and using a semicolon. I hope you have understood. Now there is an activity to practice this thing. This you got to do at home on your own. I've already discussed with you guys in the online class. Yes, in the online class. All right. Now let's talk about conciseness and clarity once again, because you know when something is concise and there are no extra words, then it's clear also. So conciseness and clarity to some extent they're related also. So let me remove these marks first. Okay, I always. This is very simple. Here you have a word, the department budget can be observed to be decreasing each year. Now, if I read it again, the department budget can be observed, and if I cut this off, and I cut 2B also, and I cut new as well. And now if I read the department budget, and I include here just one word, is, right? So the department budget is decreasing each year. It's simple, it's straight. I have removed extra roundabout constructions, right? Okay, extra words. There is no redundancy, right? So this is a better sentence. So please do not use the words which are useless, which would not add to any information, right? They are extra, they are redundant, they are there to just, you know, hinder, you know, the communication, right? The message which is being conveyed. So please, they're just giving tough time to your readers. So please facilitate, you know, your readers. Make your writing reader friendly. Do not disturb them. Do not upset them, right? Do not give them tough time. That's the key to success in business writing, I'm telling you. Now the union is involved in the task of reviewing the seniority provision of the contract. Now here, the union is involved. Okay, we don't need this. Which task? Reviewing. Okay, that means actually the writer wants to say the union is reviewing, right? So once again, you just put over here is, okay, reviewing the seniority provision of the contract. Do you get this? This is how you have to do. Please get rid of extra words. Redundancy kills your communication. No one has this much time, to read a very lengthy text. Is that clear? All right, now let's go ahead. Okay, now it says that you have to read it for, let me remove the marks first. Okay, now let's have a look at this. Activity. It says that write the following sentences by writing them in short and direct wording. Okay, short and direct wording. Let's see how it goes. It is essential that the income be used to retire the debt. Essential that. If I remove this and I say the income should be used to retire the debt, or I simply say the income, I can add over here, should, right? So should be used to retire the debt. And if I remove this, it is essential. It means the same. There is no difference, right? So why to use it is essential? It's redundant. That is not required, right? Okay, then we have another example. Reference is made to your May 10 report in which you concluded that the warranty is worthless. Oh my goodness, you don't need to use this references made. Rather, you should say your May 10 report. Now, what does it do? It actually concludes. So put S here. I'm bad at writing. Okay, put S here, right? Concludes. I'm reading it again for your understanding. It says that your May 10 report concludes that the warranty is worthless. Now, this is a better sentence, right? It says the same, it means the same, but with a few words, right? Is that clear now? All right, this number 3 you try to do on your own. Now let's go ahead. So far we have talked about, I've talked about clarity, and it says avoid needless repetition. You got to avoid. Now remember, here we are learning both things, clarity and conciseness, because they overlap in some areas, right? Okay, and they help each other to make the message better. All right. Avoid needless repetition. Why needless? What do they mean by needless? You see, if you look at this, pay attention to the words in red. Your name on the back of this check. Actually, endorse means the same. So you endorse the check. That's all. So please endorse the check. Would have been fine. Now over here again, assemble and together means the same. So you need to have one word instead of these two words or both of them. So you should say we must assemble when 10:30 a.m. 10:30 a.m. means morning time. So you don't need to write in the morning. That is the redundant. Is that clear now, class? I hope so. Now let's go ahead. Determine the emphasis in sentence design. This is another important area and you really need to understand it. Let me look for the eraser. That is the difficult part when you're recording a lecture. All right, so here we are. Determine the emphasis in sentence design. You should give every item its due emphasis. Short sentences emphasize contents and long sentences de-emphasize contents. Now let me give you an example here. If I'm writing he is absent today because he is ill. Or I write another sentence, because he is ill, he is absent today. Now, what is the difference here? Here, this sentence is comprised of two clauses, right? So if I write here, he is absent today because he is ill. Now here, the reason because he is ill to some extent is being de-emphasized, right? Because it's coming in the end. This clause is coming in the end. But if this clause is brought in the beginning, this will get emphasis. And another important thing that when we are writing, for example, if I write that, well, he is absent, he has some problems to handle at home, which are or which need urgent attention. Okay, I can revise this sentence further also. For example, if he is absent, he has some problems to handle at home which need urgent attention. This short sentences actually, put emphasis on the thing that he is absent. It stands, out from the text because this information is being given in a short sentence, right? Whereas he has some problems to handle at home which need urgent attention. This is a long sentence. It has got one more clause over here. So this content over here, the content this sentence carries is being de-emphasized in the whole text. Now, what is the whole text? Let me tell you. This is the whole text. Now, this is a short sentence. So anything which is written in a short sentence in a text, right, that is done to emphasize that piece of information, right? Or the sentences, the information which is written, using long sentences, right? That content, that information actually is being de-emphasized because we are reading and we may not be able to, pay much attention as a reader to that stuff. Is this clear now? So this is one thing they're telling you, and plus, of course, if you put something in the end of the sentence, may not, get much attention, especially in a complex sentence, right? As we discussed earlier. I hope you have understood this point that you really need to determine the emphasis in sentence design. Now let's have a look at what we have in the next slide. Look at the next slide. All right, here is important thing, and this is very important. Students normally, what do? That they undermine grammar. I don't know why do they hate grammar? I really do not understand this because This is something very important, and it is, kind of, undermined everywhere at the school level, at the college level, at university level. But please let me tell you, if your formal letters or formal writing or formal messages, if they have grammatical errors, right, you actually end up leaving very, very bad impression, right? So please avoid grammatical errors, okay? And these days, we do have uh, softwares available, like Grammarly is one of them, right? Your Ginger is another, right? So you can use these softwares to proofread your work, okay? And this way you will also definitely improve your own grammar as well. Now, what we have next, now we have this conciseness thing. Some of the techniques regarding conciseness we learned when we were talking about clarity, right? So you can use those, techniques also, removing roundabout constructions, unnecessary repetitions and all that. Let me tell you. And now let's talk about conciseness. Now, please keep one thing in mind, that conciseness doesn't mean that you have to omit the important information. You don't have to omit the important information, right? Right. What you need to do is to get rid of extra words, and instead of long winding phrases, use words, simple words, right, wherever possible, or one word wherever possible, right? For example, here, along the lines of can be replaced with the word like. At the present time can be replaced with now. For the purpose of can be replaced with for. For the reason that can be replaced with because. With regard to can be replaced with about. With a view to can be replaced with to. Now, normally, I have come across personally many letters, official letters, in different places, right? With this sort of, these sort of phrases, right? But most of the people, the gurus in business communication, they advise not to use long winding phrases, right? But that's a common practice, especially in Pakistan. But you got to learn what is right, so please avoid using long winding phrases unless you're told by your boss, right? That's a different story. So let's have a look at this one. Courteous. Now you have to be courteous, polite. You have to watch your tone. You don't have to be, harsh, right, with your audience, with your readers. And how to do it? There are two possible ways. Number one is you viewpoint. Number two is positive tone. Now let's talk about what is you viewpoint. Let me give you an example here. If I say, or maybe the examples are perhaps, okay, let me check the next slide. Maybe we have examples. All right, we do have it. Okay, now let me talk about this one. First one says that we have received your report of May 1. Now here, we have received, now over here the pronoun we actually suggests, right, that this is us. We are a big thing, right? Okay, so importance lies on us rather than the reader, you. All right, so whereas in real life, when you're writing to your customers, you have to put emphasis on them. You got to give importance to them. You don't have to give importance to yourself. So this sentence can be revised by using you attitude. So if I deduct this one and I say your report of May 1 has been received, right? So I should write for you guys here, slightly here, that your report of May 1 has been received. Now, what's the difference? In the first sentence, the emphasis goes on us. In the second sentence, the emphasis goes on or is put on the audience, the reader. The readers are important, not us, right? Same way, we have shipped the dozen cross deck sets you order. So your order of dozen cross deck sets has been shipped. Is this clear now? So you have to bring you attitude instead of we attitude, I attitude, right? Okay. All right. Another important thing, please. I'm just writing over here that do not use you attitude in negative sentences or messages. Sorry. For example, if I say that, okay, I want to blame someone, I want to, something is wrong on my, on the reader's part, right? For example, I'm writing a letter in response to a complaint, right? And it says that actually the product which was sent, right, okay, was damaged. Fine. Now got this thing investigated, okay, and I found out actually it was damaged by the customer. So I'm not going to say that you damage it, right? So I'm going to put it this way that well, we investigated into the matter, and we found out, or it has been found out that the product, when it was sent, okay, it was sent, the product when sent was in perfect condition, but when we received it back, it was damaged. When we received it back, it was damaged, right? I'm not saying directly that you damage it. I'm rather putting it, in a polite manner that it was damaged, and that's why I'm using what? Passive voice instead of active voice. So please, you do not use you when you are, talking about a negative aspect on, the reader's part or the audience, a failure or something like that, okay, or their weakness. And so because if you do that, then the tone is very harsh, and you're kind of insulting them, right? So you have to watch your tone. You don't have to use you attitude. Please keep this thing in mind. All right. Okay. Then we have one more thing. Okay. Now, there are examples given over here, class, please, because, if you are revising these sort of sentences, right, your answers would definitely vary. So you don't have to be worried about that, as long as you know what it means and what you are doing and what you're supposed to do, right? Okay, so there may be variety of answers possible. Now, avoid negativity. Here, what do I mean by avoiding negativity? Here, we cannot deliver until Friday. Now, the writer is saying that a product which was ordered cannot be delivered. They cannot deliver it until Friday. Fine. Now, but we can spot out negative tone here. Now, what could be the way to say the same thing, but removing, having removed the negative tone? The best option is that you think of an alternative day and point it out, and think of what can be done rather than what cannot be done. For example, if you cannot deliver it until Friday, you can deliver it after Friday, right? Or you can deliver it on Saturday. That's what you mean, basically. So when you're revising it, you're in a way telling the person, what you can do rather than what you cannot do. So if I revise it to remove negativity, I would say that we can deliver on Saturday or after Friday. Is that clear? So you have to remove negativity, and to remove negativity, you have to give an alternative or something which you can do, and your message should imply the same thing. So when I'm saying that we cannot deliver until Friday, and if same thing I'm saying, in other words, like we can deliver until, or we can deliver on Saturday, or we can deliver after Friday. So the same thing is being actually said, but in different way. All right. So, but it implies the same message. That different way that we can deliver right on Saturday, or we can deliver after Friday, says the same thing that we cannot deliver until Friday. So the message is not different. Message is the same. The manner is different. The presentation is different, right? Okay, the choice of words is different because we have removed negativity. We have removed, instead of cannot, we are saying can. All right. There's some samples given in the next slide, or sample responses for this exercise. Consideration refers to any sort of discriminatory language, right? For example, normally gender discrimination is a popular thing. So you need to avoid gender discrimination, that is also referred as sexism. This is what you got to, avoid. Now here, use a non-discriminatory language as much as possible, right? So for example, if I just show you some words, for example, chairman, foreman, salesman, best man for a job, manpower, right? Dear investor. So instead of writing, chairman, you should write chairperson. You should, instead of foreman, maybe workers, maybe salesman, salesperson, best man for a job, best person. So you do not write man as if women, are not good, or they have, no right to become a chairperson or something like that, or they cannot be salesperson because there is no such word saleswoman, right? So it has to be salesperson. It has to, even if you use saleswoman, right, it implies that men cannot have this role. So any sort of, gender discrimination, whether you're discriminating against women, you're discriminating against men, is to be avoided. So you got to choose neutral words, neutral terms like chairperson, workforce, salesperson, best person, and for manpower, staff, employees, right? Okay, again, workforce. And dear investor is neutral over here, already neutral. All right, class. Now, my last topic is good news letters. Now, what are good news letters? Let me tell you. Good news letters, for example, when you break a good news, right? Okay, you actually break that news. You sometimes you're engaged in writing a letter, and those letters are called good news letters. For example, if when you got admission in the university, right? So you might have received a letter, okay, admission letter or something like that from the administration. So this was a big news, right, for you guys. So that letter actually contained good news, and that could be called, a good news letter. Now we take direct approach when we are writing good news letters. What is direct approach? Direct approach means that you state what you have to. That means like there is, hold on. Just want to. Direct approach means you state the good news first, then you give the details. For example, if you have offer someone admission in a university, you would say, congratulations. You have, you're being offered, admission in our university or something like that, right? So you got to state good news first, and then you're going to give the details, and then you're going to close it friendly. Is this clear? So this got to be the approach here. And now I'm going to talk about another important aspect, that is when any letter, whether it's good news letter, bad news letter, any sort of letter needs planning. You got to plan before you write. Now, this is another big issue in Pakistan. Despite the fact that teachers they keep on telling students that you got to brainstorm, you got to organize your ideas, and then you got to put your ideas into writing. Students they never do it. Believe me or not, even accomplished writers, they revise their writing again, they organize their thoughts, then they put their thoughts into words and all that. So please, for God's sake, I'm kind of requesting you, right? Please do not start your writer without a proper planning. First, you got to plan your letter, and this is one of the ways in which we through which we plan. Now, this says 3 P's. 3 P's is a writing process. You need to identify the problem, what the situation is. Why am I supposed to write this, right? What issue I'm going to address? Why there is a need to write about? What is the purpose, basically, right? So first you got to think about it. Once you have analyzed the situation, then you got to get engaged in the process, and then through that process you're going to produce a message, right? Please keep this thing in mind. Now, process planning may involve these sort of questions. What is the purpose of my letter? This you might have analyzed when you were looking at the problem thing. Describe your audience. Please think about your audience, visualize your readers, right? And list the appropriate order, the topics you will discuss. What am I going to discuss in this letter, and why am I going to discuss it? Then you write your opening sentence, write details to be included in the body of the letter, and write your closing paragraph building goodwill. So please, at least you need to address these questions before you write any sort of letter. Keep it in mind, and in fact, in exams, I may ask you to use 3 P's, right? P's process or something. What is it called? Yeah, that is 3 P's writing process, right? Okay. Now let's talk about bad newsletters. Now you are engaged when you're, sometimes in business setting, you are engaged in, the situations when you have to reject, refute people's request, your customers' request, right? And your employees' request. You got to refute, right? You have to reject some applications because you can't offer jobs to the applicants, right? So there are many situations. So some of them are there on this slide, okay, for your consideration, just for your perusal. So just have a look at this. Someone has asked for credit or for an increase in credit. This could be a situation, and whereas you can't actually offer the person the credit, right? Okay, so in that case it's a refusal letter, it's a bad news letter, right? Now the question is how to break bad news. I discussed that how to break good news. Now the point is that how to break bad news. Is it going to be the same way? Do you have to be that straight? Are you going to put it straight in the first sentence? Answer is no. You're not going to put it straight in the first sentence, right? Now, how are you going to do it? There is a thing here, and I think something over here is written in red and you can't see. It says that you have to have this thing. You have to have this structure, kiss, right? And this is called buffer. Let me change the fonts. Actually, this was original font was, you know what? Yeah, here it is. So you are going using buffer. Now, what is buffer? Buffer is like you make readers mindset to receive, you make actually readers mind, not mindset, you make readers mind to receive the bad news. Yes, and when you do that, you got to do it in the first paragraph, okay, in the opening sentences, and when you do that, they call it. There's another simple word that you actually kiss your customer, kind of a good gesture you give the customer, and then you break the bad news. You actually kick them, right, and finally you again kind of heal their wounds, right, that sort of thing. You kiss them again. So this is how you have to do. So there is you got to remember this structure, like buffer, bad news, buffer. You have to sandwich the bad news between two buffers, right? Or you have to sandwich kick, which is actually bad news, right, in two pieces, right? Okay, now let's talk about what are buffers, what type of buffers. As I told you, buffers are those sentences, openings, which actually make up reader's mind to receive the bad news. Now, one more thing that, as I discussed earlier also, that in most of letters, you start off with the purpose. Why am I writing, right? But if you do the same thing here in bad news letters, right, you will spoil the game. I mean to say that you will break the bad news directly. Now, for bad news, especially, you don't have to state the purpose in the beginning, because you don't have to use direct approach. You have to use indirect approach. Is this clear? All right. Now there are different types here: appreciation, agreement buffers, understanding buffers, facts buffers. Now, what is appreciation buffer? Appreciation buffer is thank you for taking the time to notify us of all of the difficulties you have been experiencing with your. Now, this person is thanking. That means the writer is appreciating, right? The customers, right? That the customer notified them, right? So he's thanking them. The customer wrote them, right? Okay. We appreciate your interest in State Life Golden Insurance Policy. So all these, both of sentences, these two sentences are opening for different letters, bad news letters, and you can see that both openings are positive. They indicate, something positive, something pleasant, something, good, something which actually draws readers' attention, right? Something which actually, okay, makes the reader. These openings do not, state the bad news, right, in the very first place, right? So this is one type of buffer, and we have got another type. So let's have a look at one more type. That is called agreement buffers. We agree that account fee can initially be quite irritating. So, in agreement buffers, you agree on a mutual point, right? You kind of come up with a common point, the thing which you both can agree, right? You mutually agree on something, right? You bring that point, right, to draw reader's attention, to give the reader the impression that to give the reader an impression that you care for him, right? Okay, to give a positive gesture. So but you've got to look for a common ground. That's what you have to. This is the key to success, I'm telling you. If you want to write these kind of buffers, right, agreement buffers, right, so you got to look for a common ground and then bring that common point in front, okay, in the very first opening sentence, right? And because this is how it serves as a buffer. In other words, you are going to be very polite, very kind, very good, right, very understanding, with the customer. All right, so just have a look at the other one also. The other one also, we both realize how much both realize. It includes the customers, right? So it includes the customer, it includes him or her, right? This means that the customer might think that you're empathizing with him or her, right? You are keeping yourself in his or her shoe, and this is going to please the customer, right? So you got to do this if you are you intend to write agreement buffers, right? Okay, then the next point over here is understanding. The next buffer is actually understanding buffers. Now we know that you expect superior performance from all the office products you order from Quill. That's why we are writing personally about the Excel printer ribbons you recently ordered. We understand, full stop. We understand that you have always paid your dues in time. So this is again almost, it overlaps with agreement. But here, instead of like bringing the common ground, right, you actually come up with something which you have noted about the customer, like for example the customer's expectations and all that, right? And if you have noted it, okay, and you are quite accurate about those expectations, so you can start off with by mentioning those expectations, and then you can uh, uh, break the bad news or whatsoever. All right. So here we understand that you've always paid your dues in time. So this is something which is a fact, and this fact is related to the customer, right? So like it can be done in either ways. Either you bring the expectation, right, the customer has, or other way could be that you bring a fact about the customer. But it varies from situation to situation. All right. Now I'll end over here. I'll discuss two more buffers in my next lecture, hopefully. And please, class, you revise this recording again and again. You take notes, and I'm going to upload some practice worksheets also. Attempt them, and wish you good luck with your studies. Inshallah, I'll see you very soon once again in my online class. And if you have any question, right, about this lecture or on this topic, you're free to ask. Thank you very much. Have a nice time. Take care.